Park and in Greenwich Village. In the evenings, before he went to work the night shift, he sat in meditation with whoever showed up for the meditation practice. In February of 1969, the society moved with Samusunin to Montreal, Canada. The Zen Lotus Society became established in a second-floor apartment on Park Avenue in Montreal, where Samusunin finally settled after having made the uneasy journey to America from the East. It was here that the society functioned by holding regular meditation classes while conducting weekend retreats. The society became the first Zen center in Montreal, responding to the spiritual need of young people in those restless days. In the summer of 1969, the society acquired a piece of land near Brookville, Ontario, in an attempt to develop a rural spiritual community and to provide a site for holding countryside retreats. Soon after, however, Samusunin had to move again. The entire Park Avenue block where he lived was to be demolished for redevelopment. In the fall of 1970, he went to Knowlton in the eastern townships of Quebec. I'm sorry, I need my old lady glasses, so I'm struggling here a little bit. Yeah, in the fall of 1970, he went to Knowlton in the eastern province of Quebec to spend the winter in the country. At that time, the society ceased to function. In the spring of 1977, Samusunin moved to Toronto and the body is a fragile jar. Eyes.
I can't see it either, Toxon. I've got better eyes. I can read.
That is so comforting. Okay, I think this is better. In the spring of 1977, Samusunin moved to Toronto to the house on Markham Street. The Zen Lotus Society was reactivated in 1977 following Sunin's 3-year retreat. After a few attempts to establish a practicing community in a rented house, the society purchased an old rundown building on Markham Street and completed, the house required extensive renovation and consumed most of the energy of the society for the following 3 years. However, those 3 years of strong practice, hard work, and devotion under trying circumstances proved to be a turning point for the society. In 1981, the society opened a branch in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I think we all know where that is, but I've lost my place, which eventually developed into the Zen Buddhist Temple Ann Arbor. In addition to the Zen Buddhist Temple Toronto, which became the Canadian office of the Zen Lotus Society, and the Zen Buddhist Temple Ann Arbor, which serves as the U.S. office of the society, there are 2 other branches of the society, namely the Zen Meditation group in London, Ontario, and a center in Mexico City itself. There is now a farm in upstate New York. And also Chicago, of course. And New York City.
Well, we'll continue with the early story. Samusunin was born in 1941 in Chinju, a town in the southeastern part of Korea. From an early age, he had a fear of death and dying. When he was 6 or 7, he used to be afraid to go to bed at night out of fear that he would die and not wake up if he slept. Therefore, he tried to stay up as late as possible in order to stay alive and awake. His father had been missing since he was 3. His mother died of insanity when he was 10. The death of his mother served as a final blow to his attachment to worldly ties, and became the single most important factor in his leaving home to pursue a homeless life. At the age of 12, he wandered about from place to place, alternately begging and looking for temporary work. After 3.5 years of leading a homeless life in the world, he inadvertently discovered a Buddhist temple for peace of mind. In 1958, he began his novitiate at Namjang Song Monastery at the foot of a mountain in the district of Sanju in North Gyeongsang Province. In this remote mountain monastery, where tradition showed a sign of slow decline, Sunam submitted to the rigorous novice training for 3 years. The day of a novice monk began at 2:30 a.m. and ended at 10 p.m. In the following pages, Sunam recounts his training. I will pick just a few parts. I was called Koyangju, which means master of offering puja, or one who makes an offering. It is the name given to the temple cooks who cook rice and make an offering of the rice to Buddha before the community partakes of the meal. Although the name sounds lofty, it's a humble position usually occupied by novice monks working in the temple kitchens. It is well known that work performed in Zen Buddhist kitchens is not only a devotion of a high order, but also a discipline of attention and mindfulness. We were told not to waste anything. In the Buddhist temples and monasteries, it is a general belief that while in training, one's life is sustained by alms and generosity of the donors. Therefore, if one wastes and treats lightly that which is donated to the temple, one only adds to the karmic burden which one is trying to eliminate through spiritual cultivation. And after these 3 years, he had the choice then to decide if he wanted to specialize in chanting practice, meditation practice, or study. So he decided he wanted to specialize in meditation. Not long after I entered Pomosa, I was admitted to the Zen meditation hall, which had a sign, off limits to outsiders. The Zen master was Soban Sunam, 1890 to 1969, who became my Dharma master. When I first greeted Soban Sunam in the Fresh Wind Hall, the main meditation hall, in a tea ceremony, introducing a new student to the master and senior students of the hall, I felt as if I had inadvertently entered a tiger's cave. The silent and expressionless Zen monks who sat around facing me were frightening to one never exposed to such a situation before. But more frightening were the two staring eyes of the master, who resembled an old tiger crouched in his cave. However, I was soon to find out that these silent monks were wonderful people. Few distracting thoughts troubled them. Like children whose minds are constantly occupied with the thoughts of their mother, the minds of Zen monks were always occupied with their meditation practice. So it came time when Sun had to leave the country. So he went, after he had been in many places training, so he went back to see Soban Sunam, his meditation master. I made 3 bows to Soban Sunam and left. As I was walking away from Soban Sunam's quarters, I decided to lead the rest of my life as if I had not been born in this world. However, a series of events forced me to leave the country in the early winter of 1965. I sought Soban Sunam at Sunamsa in Kusang before I left the country. I found him sweeping the fallen leaves in the backyard. I made 3 bows on the ground. We looked at each other in silence. I finally told him that I had to leave the country and asked for his instructions on my spiritual practice. He soon understood my situation and kept silent for a while. Then he said, "It will be another 10 years before you begin to mature. Take care of yourself in the world. Cultivation in the midst of worldly activities is true cultivation. Even though you got enlightened in the mountains, you have to be tried in the marketplace. Spend your days like an empty boat, floating leisurely in the water. Live your life like an old gimlet, the sharp edge of which has worn out and fallen out of use. Be at one with all situations and flow like a river ceaselessly with no mind. After 10 years, do a solo retreat for 3 years before you teach people. Take care of Dharma and realize the way of a bodhisattva." After I left Soban Sunam and the country, I became constantly subject to the ups and downs of life. Like a piece of driftwood, I drifted along unprotected in the wide world of conflicts. Sometimes different social forces and currents that tossed me around were so strong and swift that I submerged and suffered loss. Other times I observed and enjoyed different scenery and the changing faces of life situation. All along, I was making a journey which had no set purpose aside from my being one with it, wherever it took me. 10 years passed from the time I left Soban Sunam. During those 10 years, my journey took me to Japan, San Francisco, New York, Montreal, and Toronto. And that's it for the little history. So now, Jagwa. Sunam with all these temples giving talks all the time. So Jagwa is going to read to us some parts of a talk that Sunam gave. And when Sunam gave talks, I'll explain this a little bit more. He would always have this stick, he would be holding it, sometimes over his lap, but right at the very beginning of the talk, he would have it holding just like this. And he did a traditional thing that's used to be done in Korea, not much anymore, but he revived it, which is chanting verses of the Dharma and then translating them into English and then stomping the stick. And then he would begin his talk. So Jagwa is going to try her best to do that with this talk. These are some parts. And soon we are gathering, translating into written word his talks, and we hope within maybe a few years to have them all for us to read.
This is dated August 22nd, 2010, given in Toronto, Ontario.
Just give it this microphone.
But I think it's where you sit that makes the difference. Let's see if I like where I sit here in the middle better. Sure. Oh, it's not on. Oh, I know why. Now it's on. Oh, that was my fault. It was on mute.
Oh, that's a good reason.
Got a lot of feedback right there.
Maybe turn the volume down. Testing. That's better, eh?
No.
Maybe just the volume on the receiver.
Let me see.
I don't know, you sound pretty mystical.
I turned it up because I didn't realize it was on mute. So that's why. How's that?
It's gonna be
In any case.
in the way or something.
Has to be harder.
Harder.
Really not getting everybody's attention.
Oh. Okay. Good morning. Please sit comfortably.
Go.
And the verses. Though a Buddha eye looks, it does not see. One sound, and he forgot all he knew. Now, a Buddha eye looks, but it does not see. That means even though a Buddha eye looks, it does not pass any judgment. It sees no discrimination. One sound, and he forgot all he knew. This comes from a story of a monk who was in training for many years, and he thought he was not making any progress in his training. So he was very disappointed in himself, and he became quite hopeless. So then he took advice, seeking advice from a senior monk, and the senior monk told him, "Stop worrying about it." So he took this advice seriously and traveled and ended up with a very humble task, a work assignment given to him, sweeping the temple stairs and yard. So he would do that every day with no mind. In other words, finally he parted with his seeking mind, that making progress or not making progress mind. In other words, he attained the very remarkable stage of hopelessness. One day, while sweeping the stairs, a pebble stone struck the bamboo and it made a pop sound. There, he forgot all he knew. Just at the single stroke of the sound of a striking the bamboo, at the sound of a stone striking the bamboo, he unlearned all he had learned, all he had learned. Here, as I often say, Buddhism is here to stay in the West, in Canada and in Toronto. And that means Buddhism has to be put to the task in your everyday life, applied Buddhism. And that means Buddhism has to be put to the task in your everyday life, applied Buddhism. So whatever you learn coming here, from practicing meditation and Buddhism, and also through silent meditation, whatever you absorb, you don't just learn values. In meditation, you don't learn and study Buddhism with a rational mind. It's just like overnight, a lot of rain fell down, wetting the ground. And then all these plants, weeds, they get soaked with rainwater and they grow flowers. It's something like that. In silence, through meditation and concentration, all your pores open up, absorbing the values, which you take home and put them to the task. That is applied Buddhism. Now, what do you think? The most important thing in Buddhism is prajna, or wisdom. Conventional wisdom is also good, practically, but this one is transcendent wisdom that comes from your unknowing mind, your undiscriminating mind. So something you see and experience, it's simple, clear, and wise.
The next part is, along with Sunam's direct teachings, he started back in Toronto in the early days, sending like a page newsletter, first the front and back, and he would send it out from time to time with the little Dharma information and news of the Sangha. And gradually it grew into kind of a little booklet, and then actually a bigger, thicker booklet, and eventually into this magazine style, and was eventually called Spring Wind, Buddhist Cultural Forum. And we have these in our library, and actually we have thousands of them because he had lots of copies produced. One of our family members spent peace camp with us, and he's been around for about 25 years. And it was because he read Spring Wind in a monastery in Tibet That's how far around the world these things got. Not a lot of them, but Sunam tried to get them distributed everywhere. And so there was a part in it that said, help renovate a temple, come to Chicago, and phone for information. So this, he's actually one of a Sangha member who lives in Traverse City, Kai-In, came to Chicago from Tibet and worked with Sunam to renovate our Chicago temple. And as the time went by, people were committing to take the precepts, and some of you have this past year, to formally become Buddhists. So Sunam offered that in Chicago. So Robert, which is his street name, took the course to do the ceremony. And then the ceremony was in Toronto that year. So he came on the way, all the precept takers stopped here. And he got to know us a little bit. And then we went all on to Toronto. And he decided, since he was wandering the world, that he'd make a home here in Ann Arbor. So this is just as a result of this spring wind that Sunam started. And the first one I picked up, it was about a young man who first came to the temple, if I could find it. It's got a lot of pictures of our temple in it, when it first opened. Here we go. Joyful Mind Seeking the Way, Ann Arbor, 1983. Yoshin, Ken Norman. The first time I went to the Zen Buddhist temple was on January 1st, 1983. I had seen a flyer at the People's Food Co-op advertising the Sunday service as open to the public. I remember staring at the poster, which showed a picture of a seated Buddha statue, thinking how odd it was that I knew absolutely nothing about Buddhism, and even less about Zen. At the time, I was a 19-year-old freshman at the University of Michigan in my hometown of Ann Arbor. I considered life to be an open-ended experiment, so why not go and find out? When my curiosity and I showed up at the temple that Sunday, however, a bald guy with a sharp nose and little round eyeglasses was fixing the front door and seemed slightly annoyed at my arrival. We're having a retreat, Kondana said in a hushed tone. Kondana said in a hushed tone. Then, taking note of my favorite torn, tight-fitting jeans, he added, come back next week and wear some better pants. The next Sunday, I did give it another try in better, loose-fitting pants. I was shown where to put my shoes and socks, how to sit on the edge of the bathtub and wash my feet with soap and cold water, and how to return the bath towel to its rack, all so neatly. I gathered that I should sort of tiptoe around and speak softly. I was taken into a room with a modest candlelit altar bearing a finely featured golden Buddha figure. There were brown mats and cushions around the wall of the room and a handful of other people getting settled or already sitting. I was shown how to do 3 prostrations, slowly bringing my forehead to the sculpted dark green carpeting and raising my upturned palms. I bowed to everything and was showed how to sit down on the mat and cushion and hold my hands for meditation. The bell rang beautifully, and we sat perfectly still for about a year and a half. And it goes on. And so these spring winds are really full of wonderful, not only stories from Suman, but from our members who participate over the years and our residents. So here's, I wanted to tell you that he did one of them, quite a thick one, called Women in Buddhism. And it became a college textbook in many places. So we would get orders for a couple of dozen for college courses from teachers. And it just showed his real interest in women in Buddhism, to the point where when we made pilgrimages to Korea, he often sought out the stories of the old nuns, because the nuns were really a secret force in Korean Buddhism. They really were very special. And he got a lot of stories, and one of our teachers went with him, who's an artist, and drew a lot of pictures. And then this was discovered by some scholars from Korea, and it's like a lot of unknown history of women in Buddhism in Korea. And it's become the Samusunim archive. And right now at Yale University, there's a group of scholars who are working on it, especially for us, but also especially people in Korea, because some of them didn't even know about these nuns and the stories that they had. And it's interesting because he went first to ask questions, and the nuns wouldn't give him much information. They were it's kind of humble and didn't open up. And so he tried to figure out how he could get their stories, because the nuns really had to work hard in their Buddhist training and lives. And he figured out he would try to do some research on them before he asked questions. And so he would go and he would say, Sunam, I understand that you've been working with the older nuns to form a special residence when they retire. Or, Sunam, I hear that you spent 6 years renovating this temple and that you used to, all these things. And they would say, oh, this guy, he knows me a little bit. And so they really opened up to him. And so that's why everything, and he took notes on everything and did recordings. And so that's why it's such a treasure, because what he found out, nobody else would know. And he was like that, very curious person. And always with kind of a little trickery up his sleeve. So the next thing we would like to share with you is one of his poems. Because not only was he like a Zen master and actually a scholar, and he loved music. He used to listen to operas all the time, and then he would sing. And those were the really good old days when we would sit around the kitchen table with a bowl of ice cream and sing with our stories. So when he died, our wonderful Zen teacher Sanha in Toronto put together some of his poems. And so I've asked Hayun if she would please read it to you. Here's the poem. I need it. Okay.
Tell me if you think I need it. When tired and lonely, when you're tired and disappointed, write a poem. If you can't write a poem, be silent. If your feelings are painful, go to the park. Watch the vibrant eyes of squirrels. Listen to the chat of sparrows. And stand in line with the homeless. There shall be no outcasts in the world. When you're full of complaints, write a poem. If you can't write a poem, have a glass of cold water. Go for a run. Watch your steps. Look up to the sky. Complaints are but a taint. They are uninvited guests. When you're angry and hateful, write a poem. If you can't write a poem, do 365 prostrations invoking compassion. Lower your body-mind with each bow and rise again as a true person. Surrender yourself to the Buddha within. Empower yourself with love and compassion. There shall be no scumbags in the world. When you're poor and miserable, write a poem. If you can't write a poem, remember you're still among the living. Be grateful. Learn to be content with what is available. Being poor hurts. It is a blessing in disguise if you don't mind. There shall be no poor and lost souls in the world. When you lose hope and are in despair, write a poem. If you can't write a poem, watch your mind. Plains and streams play together to entertain all beings. Is this not good enough? Is this not good enough? Wake up early tomorrow. Go for the sunrise. There shall be no helplessly abandoned in the world.
I'd like to declare that we look at Sun's teachings more, so we can all get to know them, because they have been the marrow for which our Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha have grown here. An irrepressible human being, so many stories, a beggar on the street, temple founder, a Buddhist scholar with the biggest collection of Korean books outside of Korea. Actually quite unknown. Not many people know about him. He's been married a couple of times. He tried that. He felt he needed someone as a partner in his temple work. And he has a daughter who, by the name of Aggie, who lives in Victoria, British Columbia. And she has some children, so he has some grandchildren. And he had a son by the name of Mahdi, who died just a few months ago this year. So he's survived by Aggie right now and her family and all of us. He loved Buddhism, Buddhist books, opera. And I think that one of his themes that I experience a lot with him is less is more. In the very beginning days, we did not have very much money at all. And so in Toronto, he would take us around Chinatown to the back door of the restaurants, begging. That's an interesting thing to do in this country, or in Canada. And it was true, there wasn't much. Only when the Korean people found him, they began to give him more support. But we Canadians weren't used to Buddhism. We didn't know what to do. And we've been learning that. And sometimes for entertainment, if we could gather together 250, three of us, my former husband and I, and he's the priest at the Detroit Zen Center now, I would think. We would go to the Elma Combo, which is kind of a nightclub on Spadina Avenue, and we'd get one beer each, for 250, we could do it, and dance. Always danced on one foot with the other leg out. It was weird. And I can tell you the stories, and I will eventually, but just to conclude, in his conclusion, his last words, fresh, fresh. How about that? Yeah. I tried to figure out, well, what does that mean? What great thing? Just that I think that experience was like that for him, dying. I remember my mother, when I was with her when she was dying. Among her last words were, "There's some beautiful flowers up there." So I would chant a lot with her, and that was one way that she was able to relax. And then when I would finish, she would say a few words, and I always remember, "There's some beautiful flowers up there." But remember, fresh, fresh. Birth and death are with us every moment as we inhale and exhale. Fresh. And then let's do a little chanting to conclude this memorial service within the Zen. Please stand. Good to see you all. We have so much on our minds these days after coming home from camp a few days ago, and so many people helping us out at the beginning and the middle and the end. So let's, I think it's traditional to sing Jidong Kosa. Let's just chant Jidong Kosa. So J-I-G, okay? J-A-N-G, Jidong. Jidong Kosa. 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 Jidong For announcements. All beings, one body.
All beings, one body.
I vow to liberate.
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root.
Blind passions, one root.
I vow to transform.
I vow to transform.
Dharma gates, one mind.
Dharma gates, one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.
One breath at a time. So, someone, do you have some announcements?
Yeah, of course. They're much the same as they've been in the past several weeks. We're on the same schedule for now, and there's about, you can always take a picture of the one that's out there if you want more information, because there's more on there than there is that I'll tell you. I was thinking about maybe just mentioning some of the study groups that we have, which don't always get announced. There's a Wednesday evening member sitting/practice discussion, 6:30 to 8, and a group called the Way of the Bodhisattva Study Group on Thursday mornings, 9:15 to 10 a.m. We have our meditation classes and yoga starting in September, and a special service on the 18th, which Jagwa is leading, I believe. It's called Ulambana Day. Sure.
Mom, do you know if we have a sign-up sheet for it?
We do not yet.
Okay. So Ulambana Day is a special ritual that we hold once a year in which you are invited to honor someone that you have lost either through their dying or perhaps estrangement or other difficulty. So this is a special ritual that requires some preparation ahead of time. It's in 2 weeks' time. So if you are interested, could you please see me afterward and I'll just take down your name and email address so I can send you the instructions to prepare.
Thank you. We also, do you have a comment?
No.
No? Okay.
There is a retreat.
Yeah, that is this coming Saturday, 9 to 5. I know some people are signed up already. You can sign up either out here in the lobby, I believe, or just sending the temple or Ma'um an email just ahead of time.
So this is a wonderful opportunity to spend some time deepening your practice with others. And throughout the day, we will be doing sitting meditation, walking meditation. We'll have a delicious vegetarian lunch. We'll probably be doing some gardening. So just take a break from your usual schedule and come join us.
And that concludes announcements.
Okay, we might have talked about this another one. On the fourth day of August 2024, we acknowledge this design that our temple building stand has been the home of Native peoples, the Potawatomi, the Ottawa, and the Ojibwe, the Council of the Three Fires, and also of Black Americans who have lived in our own building and been the prime residents of this 3-foot-long space. We know that this neighborhood used to be a historically black neighborhood during times of racial segregation and oppression. For our own awakening and for the awakening of all life, may the benevolent energies of our meditation, chanting, and full presence here at the service this morning extend to all beings on this planet and throughout time and space. May there be their deepening of our interbeing. May peace prevail and wars cease. Maha Prajna Paramita. Please say.
Maha Prajna Paramita.
Maha Prajna Paramita.
Maha Prajna Paramita.
Namo Maha Prajna Paramita.
Namo Maha Prajna Paramita.
May it be so. Morning.